Well, it's a wonderful night here in Central Virginia. Robbie and I chilling. What's in that fancy cup of yours tonight, Rob? That I see over there. It's like one of those copper mugs. Is
I
that
got
a
a little
mule?
Moscow Mule going on here.
Why do you have to drink a mule? Why does a Moscow Mule have to be in a copper mug? It's like the law.
It is a little.
And welcome back to the Golf Intervention. Robbie's got a Moscow Mule and a copper mug.
Yep.
I have got a mug as well.
Oh, nice. Look at that. Oh, nice. Yeah.
Zero sugar mug root beer. I'm sure that's healthy for you. We're reflecting tonight upon our interview with Dr. Raymond Prior, which was awesome.
Yeah,
and
it was awesome.
I want to say first off, thank you to Dr. Prior.
Yep.
He was awesome. I've read the transcript. Obviously, I've listened to the episode multiple times. As you and I both listened to it before we put it out. Obviously,
Yep.
You edit it, and then I listened to it. I've listened to it twice since then, plus read the transcript. And I've done that because I have a lot to learn, I think, from Dr. Prior, right?
There is so much in that episode. It's insane. Like, you can listen to that 3 or 4 times and take notes and get something new every time, I feel like.
There's a sweet spot in the episode, and I was going to make a note as to where the timing was, where there was like this 10-minute run of stuff that he was talking about, where there's a lot of talk about practice and sort of how people tend to practice with safety in mind, and also then it kind of ran into those 5 steps, which I think we'll get to. You know, you asked him a question, he talked about the 5 steps to dealing with a situation on the course, I think, is kind of what he was saying. And that sort of 10-minute run in the middle of this episode is just laden. The whole episode of that is laden with so much good stuff, I think, for the listener to take in. And I was telling you right before we came on, I said, you know, I listened to this, I read the book, I listened to the audiobook, I've listened to the episode 3 times. I was part of the episode, obviously, the interview. I've read the transcript. Why? Well, because this is not my area of expertise, right? Like, I'm very comfortable in the teaching golf mechanics mode or coaching a golfer mode. When you get into, you know, psychology of performance, that is way outside of my area of expertise, and it will remain outside of my area of expertise. You know, I am not ever going to pretend to be a sports psychologist. But what I can do, and I think this is what I took away from it that was so strong for me, is that as someone who both plays and teaches golf, I think as a player, I definitely got out so much from this study with him. 2, as a golf instructor, I feel like I've learned a lot about how to, and I'm thinking a lot about how to make sure my teaching environment supports this type of growth, right? Not in a way where I'm going to act like a psychologist to the learner, because that is never going to happen. But I mean, in a way that I can help promote stable confidence in the way we learn and practice and play on the course. And I think that's the driving bullet points that I got out of it. And I think for the listener, there was just so many things to talk about, right? And when we wanted to do the episode, originally, I said, what if we started with stable confidence, which is his terminology, and then go backwards to figure out how we build to that, right? And this is, as you know, you're a golfer, I'm a golfer. Stable confidence is like the culmination of getting everything together, so to speak, and making it go, and so that you can be present and aware and all those things. And it doesn't start when you get to the range that day. It doesn't start with. It starts with the mindset and the framework, and then building it into your routines and your habits into your.
It's an overtime thing, right? It's not something you can do like right before the round or the day of the tournament, right? It's too late.
You're not going to walk out into competition tomorrow and be like, "Oh, I'm stably confident. I'm going to breathe when I'm playing. I got this."
Oh, today I have a growth mindset.
I've got the growth mindset.
Yeah.
No. what he said was this starts way, I don't know his direct quote, but it starts way before.
Front loaded,
It's front loaded. And so thank you, Robbie, for introducing Golf Beneath the Surface to me and our listeners. Like you and I talked about Dr. Prior even before we had the podcast.
Oh, yeah. It's been an influence on this entire podcast so ever since we started.
So we've been discussing his work, and I just had never really gotten into the book and read it. And obviously, the interview was really cool. So for you now, as someone who's studied this as both a coach, probably more of a coach than a player. I mean, you and I, neither one compete very much anymore, so we like to play golf for fun. And when our motivation is fun, golf is, I don't want to say golf is
so
easy,
much easier to be accepting.
Yeah, you're just just out there hitting shots. But, in competition, it gets to be a little more difficult to have fun.
Yes.
So you as a teacher and a coach, sort of going back, I guess, a couple years now with this information, what do you feel like in the interview with Dr. Prior was probably the main bullet points that you felt as you listened back to it that the listener would be like, yes, this is maybe the most impactful couple things to take away from it?
I mean, the thing that I hear from everyone is I've got positive or negative thinking, right? And understanding that the brain doesn't really work like that. It works in pursuit or avoidance. And in general, human performance is most accessible if we are not multitasking between the two, right? So it's what are you avoiding? What are you hoping to get out of it, right? That 5-step process, I think, was absolute magic to get people to understand and just be aware of when they are multitasking, because a lot of people just aren't aware of it, right? They see their performance dip, and they're just like, okay, it must be my golf swing, right? That's the only thing that I'm able to really see or measure, or that's the only place my awareness is, whether I'm going on YouTube or Golf Channel, like it's all swing stuff. It's like, okay, let's make sure that my P4 is, wherever it needs to be, right? So I think that's kind of the biggest thing for me, in my coaching is to understand that, performance issues are rarely swing issues in of itself, right? You can have a swing issue that isn't allowing a golfer to be skillful, right? You could have skill issues. You could have shot prediction issues, right? So like going back to the Mark Sweeney episode, hitting it, doing a better and better job of hitting the ball in the wrong place.
Right.
Right. And then you could also have just like, hey, like we're multitasking, right? We're not on task. Like we're not on time, on task, because we're trying to protect something, right? And then that just literally makes us dumb, right? So like think about texting and driving, we're dumb, right? Because we're trying to do two things at once, and your brain is hardwired to prioritize avoidance, which is going to probably increase tension levels. It's going to disrupt rhythm, which we know is kind of the biggest constraint for someone acquiring skill. So it all just plays together so interestingly. I actually experienced this today, actually on the golf course in a tournament. First tournament I played in 2 years, and I literally was feeling it. I was feeling the rhythm get disrupted. Not because, leading up to the tournament, I've been hitting it fine. Like rhythms felt great, but all of a sudden in a tournament, my acceptance levels hadn't been able to be front loaded enough to the point to where I could just freewheel it and let it go. Like I felt my brain wanting to protect and control, and then rhythm got disrupted, skills got disrupted, right? And then, but I think the thing I'm proud of is I was aware of it, and I knew that it wasn't a swing issue. I didn't go trying to find fixes, right? I was like, hey, look, I just need to let, be more in the being mindset than the doing mindset, which is a lot easier said than done. But those would be kind of the main points: pursuit versus avoidance, kind of the 5-step process, and then understanding, just the on time, on task concept, I think, is huge. So
the 5-step process. So paying attention to what was going on is essentially step one. Is that what you have?
Awareness, right?
Awareness,
So
right?
What is happening, right?
Right. And then step two was,
what are you hoping to gain from that? Right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of that is the defense mechanisms. I'm trying to make sure, I'm trying to guarantee, I'm trying to do something to ensure that things go my way, right? Which is very well intentioned, right? And that's why I think it's important to go through that step, because if you don't, then you're going to make an immediate judgment on the thing that you're noticing, which is then going to just ramp up thought, and it's going to make you feel worse, right? So that's not what we're trying to do.
Right.
So awareness, so awareness first, and then what are you hoping to gain, which is usually well-intentioned. And then 3 is, what are you actually getting? So it's this process he calls disenchantment. So you have to literally get disenchanted with the current behavior by saying, hey, look, no, this is, you think you're getting this? No, this is what you're actually getting, right? It actually helps your brain get disenchanted with that behavior, kind of unpaired. So you think like a Bluetooth pairing, right? Right. So you're getting paired to this behavior. It's kind of like unpairing it. So then it can get paired to something else, right? Yeah. And then that's then the, oh, well, how would you do this if you didn't feel the need to do that? Okay, and then step 5 is, let's follow that. Let's try our best to do that.
Right. So that's, if that 5-step process, I think he went through it a couple times, and he was giving examples of it, and I was
Santa Claus.
Yeah, I mean, he kept going through it,
yeah.
and I think that the fact that I want to say he went through it 3 different times in the interview.
Yeah,
that's to me not. We should note that as the listener, right? Okay,
yeah.
Like he keeps coming back to this 5-step process, and I think that, and he was giving examples like of his tour player hitting in the divot, and kind of like how they get their way through that. And I just think, like, because he made such an important note of it, I think it's important for us to note it, and that's a process to help us get through those moments. And so I like how you listed them there. And that step 3 for me seems to be like where the what am I hoping to get? What am I actually getting? It's like, okay. It's just like it's just like this realization moment of like, okay, yeah, I'm at the wrong. I'm doing the wrong thing here, basically. So I really like that. I really thought that was awesome. It's an actionable thing for the listener.
Yeah,
and that's what we really want. What is the actionable? That's very actionable.
Yep.
Some of the bigger things to note that I think he talked about, the being on time and being off time illustration, I think is very powerful for me. I never really looked at it in that way. And so meaning, if we're present, we're on time, right, in the moment, with acceptance. And then if we're behind time, we're worried about what's already happened. So that's anger and frustration and regret and all those things. For me, and I was telling you this before, I don't, at least in athletics, I don't really deal with that a lot personally. Everyone's different.
Yeah, that's my bigger one. It's funny, we're opposite. Like, I have toxic rumination problems, right? But then in terms of like athletics and things like that, I'm not too worried about the future. I'm way more like, how could I do that? Like, I'll make judgments, about what already happened way more often.
So you'll mope along the golf course, basically, and I'll just be stressed out the whole time with fear, anxiety, stress, worry.
Yeah. If we just take the median of us two, then there we go.
But I think again, so another actionable thing for the listener is to put ourselves in that picture of the cycle that I see a lot with players, which is maybe I'm feeling some level of false confidence for the day, like or manufactured confidence. So maybe I warmed up really well. Maybe my last round of golf was really good. How many times do you hear from a player, I played my best round, and then the next day it was like I never played golf before? I hear that 5 times a week.
Yeah.
And I think some of that is this cycle. Okay, so it's like I have this confidence, and maybe it's not stable confidence, maybe it's false confidence, or manufactured competence. And so I go to the first tee and I feel good, right? And then that first bad shots that happens, I start getting into this cycle. Maybe it frustrates me. Maybe it's not the first one. Maybe it's the second one. Then I get frustrated. Then I'm like you. I'm ruminating about it. And then I'm not focused on my next, I'm not present for the next shot. And then all of a sudden I'm not hitting it well. And I've got a par 3 over water. And now I'm stressed out about that because I haven't hit the last 2 well because I've been, in the past ruminating on those. And I'm never present. And then I keep this cycle going. Or I think for me, I'm more like, no, I'm a little bit nervous on the first tee, right? I'm a little bit anxious about what's to happen. And so then I maybe perform or I don't, and then I'm reacting to that off time as I play. And so the best rounds of golf that I've ever played were very slow. They felt slow in my mind. Yeah. And I just had targets, and I was just in the moment, right? It was just in the moment. Yeah. And that's why I like going back to creating a game plan for playing golf. Like if you have good targets, like, you're out on the course today playing in a tournament, like I'm sure on the first hole you knew where you were trying to aim, off the edge of a bunker, off the edge of a tree, like trying to keep that in my space helps me it helps me stay on time because I'm focused on what my task is at hand.
Things that keep you on time are usually things that are directly related to your senses, right? So asking yourself some questions like, all right, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell, right? So all those things, what do you feel, right? So all of those are going to be things that are going to bring you to right here and right now. Whereas when you're off time, you aren't really connected to your senses when you're off time. You're usually thinking about making a judgment, or you're worried about, okay, what if this continues, right? So it's very much a more personal, kind of abstract thought as opposed to, okay, what is literally, what am I seeing right now? Like, what am I hearing right now? Just not judging it. It's a much different place to put your attention, I feel like.
And so I think when we're in that moment, someone asked a question about visualizing your shots, or I think it was Mark Grace. And what he said, and I wrote it down, was what you're really doing is clarifying your pursuit-based task is what you're really doing there in your pre-swing. You're clarifying the pursuit-based task in the pre-swing. And again, I think that's so powerful for golfers because I think a lot of golfers play and they never clarify it, right? They may never have a target. And you and I have talked about this on other episodes. Like, maybe I'm not seeing the shot intention that I'm trying to hit, or I'm not picking a solid target. And then it just leaves me open for the avoidance, right? Rather than the pursuit, because we're not in the moment pursuing. Like, right. I want to hit it. I want to hit it at that tree. Well, it's not an aim thing. It's a focus thing. And I think that's really a really powerful reminder from him.
Yeah.
So I thought that when I read it, when you talked about it, I read more about it. I listened to it on the audiobook. He talked about it. That sense of being on time. I've talked to all my kids about it. We've had this conversation about it. I just think it's powerful for life. Like, that's such it's such a cool thing. I wish I would have heard that 40 years ago. I really do. But hey, you know what? They say the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, and the second best time is now. So
right now.
Let's not have regrets. Let's not have regrets. Let's just push forward. So I thought that was great. If the listener was saying, okay, Eric, I play golf. I've never thought about this stuff, which I think a lot of people haven't. They just play. And if you as their coach, me as their coach, we can notice things like them creating safety in their practice environments. We can notice things like them attaching their self-worth to their score that they shot that day. We can notice them being off time. We can notice all these things, or having a fixed mindset. I'm not judging any of that, but I'm noticing parts of it or elements of it. And as the golf swing coach, I don't get into this much with the student. I still don't know that I will, right? Like I think there's little moments where I might nudge a person a little bit, like, by and large, the people that I coach are highly successful people, right? They know how to do things well. This is not a. It's just in golf. Golf can be this thing that like you said, you could have a growth mindset in business and a fixed mindset in golf.
Yeah,
and that's totally true. So, I think that for me as the instructor, again, I've got to try to incorporate some of this as my knowledge grows. And again, I'm never going to be an expert in this, but I'm going to be someone who pursues knowledge.
Yeah.
For many years, when someone in my lesson bay, I don't care who it is, says I can't do that or I can't. As soon as the words I can't come out of their mouth once or twice, I'm like, hey, let's reframe that as I'm currently struggling with.
Yeah. I haven't yet, right?
I haven't yet, or I'm currently struggling with, or I'm, not quite getting to. So those are my little nudges towards a growth mindset. But I think go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that's, as a coach, kind of probably where we need to stay as far as our lane goes. I really like asking questions. So, talking about clarifying the present pursuit-based task, really simple stuff like when you're on the golf course, where are you trying to start it, right? What's the wind doing? What's the lie? How much are you playing for slope? Things like that are bringing their attention into the present. If I feel like their acceptance levels are not as high as they need to be, I'll just start by kind of modeling it for them. They'll hit a shot, and then I'll just explain it exactly as it was. Like, how interesting, ball hit the toe there. Okay. Right? And then just like leave it at that, right? Whereas I think their default is to make it more personal, and mine is too. Like I said, I just played today, and I've caught myself doing it all the time, just making outcomes more permanent, pervasive, and personal than they actually are. But I think modeling that is really powerful. Coach Scott for the UVA women's teams has a really good one where she'll have her players play, and they have to say something factual after every shot. And so I really like that one. So I've stolen that from her a few times.
So give us an example of you doing that today on the golf course, where you were factual about a result of a shot to yourself.
Gosh. I would say a few times I was. I hit one way right off of a tee box on a par 5. And then I do distinctly remember me saying, how interesting the face was that far open. Right?
So you just make an observation about the science of what just happened.
What was cool is like that was the only one the entire day that I missed. Like it was a really scrappy round of golf. Like it was not pretty at all. Like I hit a lot of squirrely shots, but that was the only one that was really because the face was that far open.
Right.
So there was no need to fix it. It was just a one-off thing, right? And so it's I think a lot of golfers have the default of, what caused that? Let me try to control this and make sure that doesn't happen again, which is where we're trying to get people away from.
Yeah. So going back to the end goal, stable confidence. I think it's like he said it so well. I'm going to read some of his quotes here from the transcript. But he says, if you go out to the range and you stripe it, you're going to feel a boost in confidence. Nothing wrong with it, and there's nothing wrong with this. Or if you go out and play a great round and you just feel like, I can do this tomorrow as well. Again, nothing wrong with that. But it's kind of like junk food energy, though. It's a really short spike, usually pretty intense. It's going to tail off pretty quickly, which is why many people are chasing confidence and they're jumping from one thing to another, from equipment to equipment or swing thought to swing thought, to try to create certainty about the future. And again, if you're defining confidence as a must feel certain about how the future is going to play out, this is the formula that is going to follow, which most people do, because when we do get that situation, we do feel that way. So therefore we go, well, that must be confidence. And I think that what you were saying there is because of your mindset, you're able to say, hey, the outcome was what it was. I mean, I hit it way to the right, and the face was open. I'm not going to go into a fixing mode here because I have, and again, you weren't like, oh my gosh, because I hit that ball way to the right.
That
now
means I'm a terrible golfer or something. Yeah,
I'm a bad teacher. I'm a bad person. Jackson's going to think I'm a terrible golfer. He's not going to be able to tell his friends at school that my dad's better than your dad at golf. Like all these things that we tend to have in our self-speak. And if you, the listener, are not, if you say, I never say that to myself, you're probably kidding yourself. Yes. So we all have that, right? And so what he would say is we need to develop into this place of being where it's just like we're stable.
Awareness.
Yeah, we have it. I'm okay. And so not reacting emotionally to a shot like that was a great. Thank you for sharing with the listener, Robbie, that you hit a big block off the tee shot once today. But we can all learn from that, right? Like you said, it's weird that the face was that open. You made a statement about it. So I thought that was great for you to do that for the listener. But these are the examples that they can take with them to help try to react better. So, slamming your club down and moping around and trying to fix the next shot. Did you go to the next tee box and go, oh, I need to not hit this way to the right?
No, I can tell you, like I legitimately was saying, what I tell people in lessons is like you're not really allowed to make a change unless you know it's a pattern. Like unless it's maybe 3-ish in pretty close succession, like variance is a thing. Like unfortunately, right? There's nothing we can do that I'm aware of to take away the dispersion or the variance. And it's on a bell curve. I know I've said this before, but like all of your shots are going to happen on a bell curve. Most of your shots are going to be average. Some low percentage of your shots you're going to perceive as amazing. Some low percentage of your shots you're going to perceive as terrible. So you can't fight the fact that that dispersion is real. So I just said, okay, all right, let's see what happens on the next one. And it was fine. Like very next shot was totally fine. Like there doesn't have to be a reason why that one particular shot, the face was open. It's just every second on a clock is 6 degrees, right? So just keep that in mind. And that face was probably 4 degrees open. So it was less than a second on a clock, right? Mm-hmm. So I like to use that analogy a lot of times for players to give them some perspective.
So going back to mindset, our least listened to episode of the last 10 has been, actually might be our least listened to episode, is the one entitled Mindset, a Golfer's Secret Superpower.
I know, so sad.
Which is an incredible episode. So if you, the listener, have not tuned into that one, it's where we talk, and we did actually not really talk specifically much with Dr. Prior about growth versus fixed mind. I mean, it was mentioned a little bit, but he didn't go into deep details about that. But that's really the framework, right? That's the big picture. We've got to build everything around the growth mindset. And so if you haven't listened to that episode yet, please go back and listen to it. Just because there's so much good. This is not a phony episode. Like,
no.
It is absolutely the framework for everything that we're talking about here. And if you don't have a growth mindset, like you were saying to Dr. Prior as he was going through his 5 steps of whatever he was calling that. What was the 5 steps of, what was it? 5 steps of acceptance or something? Or I don't remember exactly.
I know. We need a catchy phrase for it or something.
He basically just said, "Here, go through these 5 steps." And if you don't
in
have
the book, in the book it's this might not be the same, but there's a process in the book where it goes trigger, behavior, perceived reward, and then actual reward, and then new behavior.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
So
it's 5 steps.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a growth mindset, which is what you mentioned to him in the interview, it'd be really hard to get to step 3. It'd be really hard. And so what we end up doing is we end up being fixed. This is where the fixing comes in, right? Like a fixed mindset's always trying to fix everything. Like they don't accept that there's some variability in the outcome. And so then all of a sudden, I did something wrong. Now I'm going to fix it on the next swing. What am I bringing to the tee? I'm already off time because I'm worried about the last one, right? I'm nervous about this one and worried about the last one at the same time that I'm trying to fix it. What are the chances I'm going to hit a good shot in that moment? Very low. And then my self-worth starts to be challenged. Like, I stink at golf and I'm terrible. Da, da, da. It just boom, 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 boom. I see it all the time. And so if we could just stay out of that cycle, right? But it starts with the growth mindset. It starts right there.
Yep,
and if you assume that you have a growth mindset when it comes to golf, but you've never really looked into it, I don't know. You may not have a growth mindset. You may, but you may not. You
might like the idea of having a growth mindset.
That sounds really cool. I bet I'd do that.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is in the lesson, I am not going to challenge you on that. But here on the podcast, I can shout it out to the listener who I don't even know who's on the other side of this, got me in their headset. Yeah. I can say, look at that episode, Mindset, a Golfer's Secret Superpower, and see if you have that foundational piece to your game. And if you do, great. Then we can learn these other steps along the way towards stable confidence. If you don't have it, it's going to be very hard for you. I don't think you'd ever have stable. You have to have that to get to stable confidence.
You have to, I think.
Yeah. So I think that's his big thing for him. Like, he's the stable confidence guy. That's the thing. And how cool was it that he was like, oh yeah, I just got back from Paris working with athletes in 5 sports. And so that was really neat.
It's no big deal.
No big deal. And for someone who's studied mindset in the past, he validated me on a couple of things, which made me feel really, really good. Number one was on the episode prior to him coming on, I talked about how I was visualizing myself being uncomfortable on the first tee at Marion.
Yeah.
And I was like accepting of the uncomfortable and then practicing tee shots and then trying to deal with if it was good or bad. I could visualize that for weeks going into it. And he was saying how visualizing yourself playing perfect golf really is detrimental because it's not going to happen and then you have to react. Whereas if you visualize yourself being uncomfortable or making a mistake and then having to react to it, and how do you do that, and having acceptance, I was like, whoa, that was what I said on the last episode, so that was kind of cool. Yeah. And then also with the Penn State wrestling program, which is dominant, by the way, people dominant. They are the most dominant NCAA program that there is, although UVA swimming must be pretty good too. They're at the Olympics. But yeah, and he's like, oh, well, yeah, they talk about having fun. They're all about mindset. It's all about mindset. And so that was cool for him to say that too. So kind of validated a couple things. Not that I needed validation, but it was kind of nice to hear. So any other things you wanted to cover today, Rob, on this Reflections episode? Dr. Raymond Prior.
Yeah, I would say that the big thing is to, if you have children or even for yourself, praise using verbs, not nouns. Right? So if you're going to say, instead of saying I am a good blank, say, I'm a hard, I worked hard, or I, something more verb based, I think would be, again, in the context of golf coaching, I'm trying to get away from praising just good round, bad round, right? That's not helpful. I like to praise things like, were you on time? Were you on task? Did you stick to the game plan? Did you make adjustments when needed? Like, those are things that we can actually control. So those are the things we should probably be praising, not the things that are actually outside our control. So that'd be probably one of the big things for me.
Yeah, that's keeps coming up as a theme, isn't it? Through the episodes, processes, control versus out of control, focus on process, not results, like all that.
Because I think
it all comes back together.
I think as soon as we start trying to control things that we really can't or shouldn't, I think that's when we get into that like trap loop that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So just appreciate the things that are in your control, and then accept the things that aren't.
Love it. So if we were going to summarize for the listener, actionable steps. To me, it would be study, learn, and practice a growth mindset. Yep. Step one, right? That's the framework. That's the whole building blocks of the whole deal. Learn the nuance of that. Learn the characteristics of that. Figure out how you can help shift that in your own mind, right?
Yeah.
Secondly, would be, I think as we talk about golf, is in your preparation to play, leading up to what am I going to do? I'm going to have a good growth mindset. Then I'm going to practice. Okay, so in my practice, I'm going to have variability, change my targets, practice ugly, so to speak. Like, I think he said, I don't want to misquote him, something like, well, hitting 10 perfect 7-irons in a row is great, but it's pretty much meaningless.
Yeah.
You would have been better off doing something else. And so I think that is part of growth mindset as well, like understanding that you're not practicing with safety, trying to replicate. You're trying to say, no, what happens when things go wrong, or how do I change? You're not going to grow your skill set by practicing in comfort, right? So you're not challenging yourself enough, is what he said. Totally agree with that. So think about muddying up your practice a little bit, I would say. Getting on the course, being on time. From your warm-up to the first tee, being present, having some acceptance, right? And acceptance we've defined on this show is from episode 1. We've used the term acceptance, and it's things like there's variability in my results. There's going to be a dispersion pattern. If we want to get technical about the golf stuff, I'm going to have, very variable results in lies and scores and all that. And so when I have acceptance of all that before I get to the first tee, I'm going to be okay if I miss one or if I hit one in the woods. And then I'm going to react to it in a way that's more based in reality than emotion, right? To what you were describing. I have acceptance of it. I'm not going to go into a fixing mentality, swing to swing, and I'm not going to get trapped in the angry about what just happened, stressed about what's about to happen, try to fix the next one. And that's a way to not play golf for fun. It just isn't. Yes. It's just not fun. So you're not going to perform well that way. You're not going to have fun that way. And then there is the 5-step strategy to help you get through those sort of decisions on the course to help you. It's a process of getting through it.
Yeah, I think you can take what Eric just said and then just overlay that 5-step process on top of that and say, okay, well, this is what we're trying to do. The 5-step process is kind of how we do that. So it starts with awareness. And I think that's where, if we want to talk about mindfulness, I think that's really what mindfulness is. It's like, it's no different than taking a can of Dr. Scholl's Odor X foot spray and spraying the face and hitting a shot and taking a look and seeing where it is. You're not, the face spray isn't judging the shot. It isn't saying that's a good or a bad shot. It's just telling you literally this is just what happened. So mindfulness is just viewing your attention as what it is. So is your attention on time? Is it off time? Is it on something external? Is it something internal? Right? Is it broad? Is it narrow? Is it, you got all this stuff in terms of where your attention is, but you can literally just pay attention to where your mind goes. And I think having that understanding that it's just awareness, like it's all it is. And that being the first step is, I think, a really, really powerful thing.
Well, I think that was a great summary. And I think it was a fun episode. Yeah. I know I've had a lot of people talk to me about it and say, wow, it was pretty good. It was powerful. I think, like me, people want to know more about it. I think it feels like a practice. Does that make sense? It feels like and again, my worldview is a little different. It's not an Eastern thinking. It's a little Eastern thinking with the mindfulness and some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it's new to me. It's new to a lot of people, and I think it feels like a practice in a way. And then, how do you incorporate that? How do you practice? How do you practice your practice? How do you get right? And there's a long view of that, like Dr. Prior said. And so you have to be ready for that. You have to prepare for that. Lay those foundations.
But the more I think about it, it's like not having a mindfulness practice is like not having TrackMan for ball flight. You're just seems as if, right, you're just kind of guessing. Whereas like if you have a mindfulness practice, you can say pretty objectively where your focus is or where your attention is at a given moment. Just like a TrackMan is going to say, hey, this is where the impact spot was, this is where face path, all that stuff. So I think it's, like you said, it is a little different than what I grew up with, what you grew up with, maybe you, the listener, grew up with, but I think there's a reason why it's persisted for this long, where there are accounts of mindfulness as far back as I think you can probably go in history. So it's a pretty fundamental thing, and it makes sense why it needs to be a part of what we do if we're trying to perform highly in probably just about anything.
Awesome. Well, Rob Fales, I think that wraps the crux of the Reflections episode. Yep. That was really fun. Really fun. Thank you.
I like doing these reflections. Yeah.
Yeah. I told Robbie when we logged on, I said, let's just do this. Let's just bring our thoughts to it, not structure it really, and just talk like you and I would on the phone. Yep. And if we hate this episode, we won't use it. We'll do another one. But I think that was a pretty good conversation. I enjoyed the conversation.
No, it was good. Yeah, it was
we
fun.
covered a lot of the stuff that I think was good. So you, the listener, if you haven't, you can check the show notes again. I'm going to link the book, Golf Beneath the Surface, Dr. Raymond Prior. I'll link his podcast. I did have someone come in and tell me they were listening to his podcast a bit. So I noticed, I have not listened to it yet, but I have noticed that, episode titles are things like, acceptance or, it seemed like stable confidence. So I think he goes in probably a little deeper on some of those.
Mm-hmm.
And so check that out. No reason not to. We don't know what Olympic athletes he was working with, but man, the team seemed to be doing pretty good. So I bet there was a good influence there. Yeah. And if you want to have our exclusive bonus content, you can find us on the golfintervention.substack.com. And we've put out a lot of bonus episodes, or 2 bonus episodes, a lot of bonus content out there. I'm currently doing a series on TrackMan science, which I've put out 1 blog post, and I'm going to do a whole series on taking, I think, a little bit deeper dive into some of the science of the stuff that we talk about and what the influences of those are on the game and on the ball flight, because I think that for people that play golf, having an understanding can lead to acceptance, Robbie, don't you think? That's why we're doing that part of it. So the golfintervention.substack.com. Thank you to those of you that have subscribed to our exclusive content. That's really, really generous of you, and we're very excited that you've done so. I'm going to be doing some more videos for the group, which I did the other night with my daughter, which was really fun. So we're going to be doing maybe a weekly video update of just some things that I learned through the week, which I think will be fun. 5 to 10 minute videos, nothing big.
I like that.
But things I see in my lessons each week that I think that group, that network on Substack can learn from. And I'm a big fan of Substack. I'm getting deeper into it. Again, I really like it because we can create our own community on there. It's not a big algorithm-driven place with crazy ads and all the stuff that social media has turned into. Substack is still, and I think will always be, it's their nature to be sort of an ethos that's away from that. So I think that'll be nice. So check us out on Substack. You can see what we've got up there if it interests you. And I think that's all I've got, Rob. You got anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
I think we got it.
What a great night it is. And tomorrow you're going to play better, right? Because you're going to have acceptance. You're going to be being tomorrow, not doing.
Yep.
And have fun. You're
right.
playing like 7 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
But I'll be at work all day, so I don't play because golf's not fun for me. I'm just kidding. I wish I could have played. Just a little bit too busy. So
yeah.
Good luck tomorrow.
Thanks.
Thank you, listener. That was really, really fun. We'll catch you next time.
See you.